Hello, my name's Terry. Welcome to Snowdrop Sunsets, and I am a energy and manipulation expert. I am the master of the shadow. Thank you for finding this video. The video today is about anarchy and anarchistic views, and why actually anarchy is probably our most sensible and sanest alternative to our current system, political system, I mean. So straight out, I would like to just declare that it's not anything I've ever studied. I've never studied politics, nor would I be inclined to in any way, shape or form. But I understand politics, and I understand it to a degree of energy and manipulation. And also I have a bias. I would, if I was going to label myself as anything politically, it would be an anarchist. So obviously there's a bit of a bias there that I think this is a good idea. But actually, I don't really believe in labelling people, especially not based on their views. I find that very dangerous. So, the information that I'm going to share, what I'm going to say, is based on my opinion, my ideas, and has nothing to do with any influence from anywhere else, other than my life experience and the natural influences of others that have been involved in that. Brill. So, what is anarchism? Or what is it to be anarchistic? It has a particularly negative connotation, I think. I think when people think of anarchism, they imagine rioters in the streets, tearing the place apart, causing nothing but intentional chaos. It's not what it is. Anarchism is intentional chaos, to a degree. But actually what anarchism is, it's the removal of control. It's actually declaring that we do not need anybody to control us as individuals, or actually us as a collective, as a society. And then the idea being that by removing that element of control, that people therefore have their own power, their own accountability, and then would naturally have to create their own sense of order in the world. So actually, by choosing to create a more chaotic, intentionally chaotic system, what would happen is we naturally would create more order. What we've got at the minute, well, it's a farce. I think people, I'm in the UK right now, I think people think we're living in a a democratic society. We're not. I don't know what you would label the society we're living in. It's not quite fascism, it's not quite communism. It's somewhere in the middle, but it's definitely very, very deep in control. It's a deep control regime we're in. And I don't know, someone's probably written books and done all these lectures and given that a name. If somebody's given that a name, excellent. But whatever, regardless to me, it's nonsensical, because actually if you want to create order by control and everything, and by enforcing order, actually what you create is chaos. We live in a dualistic universe that needs to find balance, and the way we find that balance, potentially in one way, is to balance extremes. Personally, I don't think that's it's one way to do it. If we want harmony, there's definitely other ways that we could do that, to find that balance. Accepting diversity and tolerance is definitely one of them, which comes with anarchy. If we were actually in a democracy, a democratic society, which, like I say, we're not. If we were, part of us loves the idea of it, really do. Part of us thinks, oh, well, I can see why that idea was sold and people would accept it, but it no longer sits right with my life experience and everything that's currently playing out, that anybody has the right to tell anyone else what to do, that anyone has the right to enforce. Maybe it's tell them what to do is one thing, yeah, give advice, suggest, guide, mentor, coach, all that, whatever. You know, we all manipulate each other one way or another. But enforcement is sick. It's literally, yeah, crazy. Really crazy. It's abusive. And I've done a little diagram to try and explain it. Sorry if I'm rushing. This, I have no idea if you can see it because I cannot see this camera, but this is a little diagram I've done, and it's based on, if you've ever been to like SeaWorld or Sea Life Centre or you know, London Aquarium, anything like that, you might see these pyramids, right? Or you get like little key rings and they've got like water in them, and there's normally like a little creature just floating on the top, bobbing along. This is kind of what this would be visualized as in 3D. And I think what people think that, you know, this line here is democracy and that we are somehow floating along this line here, but we're not. We're actually now so far deep in control, we're falling into a very, very deadly and dangerous space. We're not, like I say, we're not quite fascism. Fascism's like over here. Communism's over here. They're both deep in control, but they're extremes. So we are kind of in the centre. But our democracy, we're not here. We're not bobbing along in this nice, lovely little spot between order and chaos, between control and freedom. We're deep down here. We're deep down, drowning in control. And like I say, the idea of democracy, I suppose, would, if you were to release that control, would bob along here and everyone would be happy. But I don't know. I'm not sure I can personally believe in that. So anarchy is up here. Total freedom, freedom of the individual, freedom of the one, power to the individual. And for me, this is not about denying anyone else's needs. Actually, it's the opposite. It's I think or certainly when I find my power as an individual, when we find our true power as an individual, when we are free to be ourselves, when we're accepted as ourselves, when we're tolerant of ourselves, then we don't need to enforce our views on other people, and we realise how connected we all are and how important diversity is. Nature's way of balancing is harmony, is diversity. It's having all these different ideas, all these different forms of life, all living out in the way that they see fit, and it works. Does it mean it's always clean? No. Does it mean it's always ordered and structured, controlled? Absolutely not. Does mean, though, that there's generally a balance created. And I think we've explored democracy for a long time now, and we've proven it doesn't work. It kind of doesn't work because we've allowed certain people to stay in power and have that power of control and control that's dragging us down. It's a false democracy actually that we live in, because actually some people have had power for a very long time and have had control for a very long time. And also anarchy isn't about mitigating leadership either, because naturally, you know, as we see in nature, naturally some beings, some personalities, some creatures are stronger leaders than others. And when we allow that, rather than trying to vote, and in fact what the voting system does, it takes people that we would probably never choose to follow and amplifies their egos, narcissistic ways, and we end up following people who don't want to. They end up in positions of power and leadership when actually they probably shouldn't be. Whereas if you take away that idea of power and leadership combined, whereas if you've got personal power, selecting a leader is in someone that you choose to follow or listen to or take guidance from, wisdom, advice, you can actually get a healthier version of leadership. I see. Just want to check. Excellent. I wasn't sure if it was recorded there. One example of how to explain the reality that we are not in a democracy is that, and we're very deep in control, is if you consider the law at the minute. It's probably a book about this thick. Probably takes up reams and reams and reams, and actually you need a degree, 5 years training, 7 years training before you're classed as being capable, culpable and able to understand and be a lawyer, solicit the law. So in a very simple form, if we were in a democracy, every time a new law was created there would be a debate about another law that had to be abolished. Just to give you that real kind of sense of what that up and down balance would be. We often think as democracy is a swing like this, up, like backwards and forwards. But we forget about the up and down, and when you add in more and more laws, you're pulling us deeper and deeper down in control, and the only way to free that would be to release laws. So if a new law was going to come into force to pull us down, another one would have to be released to keep that balance of freedom, that freedom of movement up and down. So just imagine, you know, back and forth, freedom, up and down, we're deep in control. because nothing's bouncing back up. Yeah. Yeah, so to be fair, that's why anarchy is right at the top, because actually it's not even that there would be a lawless, you know, state or anything. It's just that we would create our own law based on our own deep sense of knowing. And I mean, obviously it can seem a little bit far-fetched currently with all the intolerance in the world, and assuming that each other would just cause violence upon each other. And you know, it is a potential with anarchy, because obviously there is no control, so there would be that element of, oh, something could flare up, but also there is, like I say, a much stronger sense of personal responsibility and accountability with anarchism. We're not seeking anybody else to enforce a law. We're not giving our power to anyone else to keep us safe. We have to do that in ourselves. So actually, therefore, communities become tighter, families become tighter, you know, whatever it is that needs real protection, rather than just assuming that we're free and we're safe, which we're not. And then because, you know, the police are there and they'll come and rescue us and save us from these nasty criminals, it's not going to happen. We're actually weakening ourselves because we're down in this control and we're taking away our power. Just when you consider the law at the minute, I think, you know, you only have to be 10 or 12 to be culpable in the law, but actually we're not taught it at school, and it's so complicated. As I've said, you need to study 5 or 7 years before you can be classed as competent in it. It's completely irrational to expect a 12-year-old to be able to follow laws that apparently an uneducated and, you know, someone who doesn't have a master's or a degree in law would not be expected to understand, to be able to explain it. If somebody is supposed to be able to follow the law and know and be able to live in that, it should be simple and clear enough that that 12-year-old understands the law and their rights, if that's what they have. But actually, that's not the case. Actually, it's not the case. It's like, well, we're not going to tell you what the law is. We're going to assume you're too stupid to understand what the law is. We're going to make it so complex you can't actually understand what the law is. And then if you put a foot wrong, we're going to punish you. Right. That's really fucking mental as I'm concerned. That's really deep down here in sickness and control. Yes, so a couple of amazing anarchistic ideas that I think, you know, just help to explain a different perspective, different possibilities, because I don't even think people genuinely consider any alternatives to democracy, because they think democracy is the best and right answer. They think democracy is the best and right answer that we've managed to come up with as humans. And like I say, potentially the idea of it, you know, floating around, bubbling, this idea is quite nice. But it's not realistic to me, and I think, like I say, because we've allowed this relationship between power and leadership, power and control, and resources and power to all be combined, and we've left and allowed that hierarchy and that power to be with the same people for a very long time. So I'm talking now, you know, about the transfer of power that went from kings and queens and rulers, and those same families, those same mindsets, those same, the resource thread still exists in the world today, you know what I mean? It still exists. So we're not actually democratic if there is still that strong hierarchy of power and leadership. So one example of like an anarchistic alternative view would be looking at the economy. And it's not this universal basic income idea either, because that's communism. And although at first I was very appealed to that idea, and it would definitely help me out at the minute, it's a bit dangerous, because you're still communism, because basically that universal basic income idea is somebody else giving you and saying that's what you need, that's what you'll be happy with, and that's what you'll survive with. And yeah, you'd be like, oh yeah, thank you, that's nice. But it's giving away your power, you see. That's the transfer of energy, that's the manipulation. Oh, now I've given you what you want, you have to obey, you have to comply, you have to do as you say, as we say. So an anarchistic view of the economy would be, for example, if there was no one person, or like the Chancellor, in fact no parties, no control of the economy at all. And imagine if we all just had Our bank accounts, that was a collective account. So nobody can tell you what you do and don't need, or what you can and can't take. You actually just have access to take anything you need without limit. We all have equal access. We all have the individual power to access the collective economy. And everything we create would have to go back into that, because effectively then you're taking away that element of control. You're taking away that that somebody else has to validate or value what I'm producing in order for me to get what I need to survive. And once you take that away, actually it would have a massive ripple effect on so many things. I've discussed this idea with other people, and they've come up with all sorts of silly ideas like, but some people would totally take advantage. We've got billionaires and trillionaires in the world. You don't think they're taking advantage of the economy? They are. You've got so many people working in jobs that they hate, jobs that are causing them illness, jobs that they would never do if their survival didn't rely upon it, if they hadn't have been forced into that position by the ideas of others. So it's similar to this universal basic income idea, but instead of it being like, well, someone's going to control that and give that to you, you would just take for yourself what you need. And within that level of chaos, yes, there might be a bit of disruption at first, for sure. Of course, what you would find is the entire economy and the entire production and the entire systems that we live and work in would go down to what we need. Not only what we need, what people are willing to comply with. Because when you try and force people to comply with something they don't want to, you take people out of the alignment, and then you get that all the negative consequences of their emotion, their rebellion, all these repercussions we know, mental health problems, addictions, all these things. When you try to force things onto people, they rebel, and that causes chaos. That is the chaos, because you're trying to control people, so they're gonna be chaotic. It's just the natural dichotomy. So if you're just like, look, fine, do what you want, take whatever resources you need to live your life. And like one of my friends was example was like, well, what if everyone just wants to buy private yachts, these massive private yachts? I'm like, right, fine, okay, everyone wants to buy private yachts. I would not want a freaking private yacht, and I'm sure there's tons of other people that wouldn't. But just say, right, that was her example that she threw it as. Everyone wants to buy private yachts, right, fine. Except the only way they're going to get them private yachts is if there are people willing to make them. So because there's no enforcement, because you're not forced to do a job you'd hate or you're not interested in, there's two things that would happen. One, the quality of the yachts would way improve, because the people who are creating them are doing it because they really want to, because they're really passionate about creating yachts. The workmanship, the craftsmanship, the love that goes into that yacht, would be next level. The innovations around yachting and making them, faster and easier and better and all the rest of it, again, would improve, because no one's controlling the direction of the yachts. And the other thing is that actually, if not many people want to make the yachts, then you just cannot have it, can you? You want to buy a yacht and there's not a yacht available there to buy and no one's prepared to make it for you, you cannot have your yacht. It's just as simple as that. So actually, what that little idea I've just said would get rid of our capitalist mentality of consuming and consuming and consuming, because it would self-limit, self-regulate itself. It would be the true supply and demand of the market, not because you can buy in labourers to make tons of yachts, because they don't have to, because there's nothing forcing anybody to do anything that they wouldn't be willing to do. That's just one example. I'm trying to think of another one quickly if I need to. Don't know if I need to. I suppose around the law, law and order. At the minute, there are certain people who will be punished by the law, and there's certain people who won't be. Generally, the people who will be punished by the law are people with mental health problems, addiction problems, low class people, working class people. Basically people at the bottom. They're very easy to control. Well, took the law, because you're behaving inappropriately, and the people who get away with it, people with power, people with money, people with privilege, they don't have to follow the law anyway. And if you change that up, I've done research, I've done videos on legal rape, and I'm doing more research around that, which is around the myth, it's not a myth, what is it? The illusion of these protective services like social services, the police, all these things that are supposed to be helping, but actually they're not helping, they're controlling. They're forcing people to live in a certain way, and they're forcing them down, in fact, rather than trying to lift them up into their own power, their own freedom, their own sovereignty to choose. Imagine if somebody raped your daughter, right, and your daughter found out and she was, you know, really, not even, I don't even want to pass on that power. Imagine if someone raped you, right, and you had the right to just go and fucking cut off their balls. They're not going to rape anyone else, are they? What if somebody murdered your son, you know, and you have the power and the right just to go and murder them? They're not going to murder anyone else, are they? You say, oh, well, what about innocent people getting murdered and stuff, right? Yeah, that could happen in the chaos, it could. Yes, it could. But then, potentially, you know, that cycle would end itself. That person, when somebody actually has to deal with the consequences, somebody realises they've actually murdered someone innocent. Sorry, the light is changing loads in here. It's getting really dark. It's very stormy outside. It's not me getting all dark, maybe it is, but I'm going to finish up soon. So actually that whole idea of, was it vendettas and, what's it called? Not vandalism, I can't think of the word when you're, vigilante, that's it. Vigilantism, that it would never end and it would just cause nothing but chaos. Actually, if somebody, you know, murders somebody innocently, they're then going to deal with the consequences of that, to be accountable, to be responsible. So there would be intentionally hesitance there because they know there's nobody to check them. I'm going to leave it there because actually there's a lot more to this, and it links also with a lot of the understandings that I have around natural laws of nature and how animals and other natural beings coexist. And it's also one of the permaculture principles which I really agree with, that you know, self-regulation and accepting feedback and self-regulation. And actually, if we don't have the opportunity to self-regulate, if we can't handle feedback, then all we're doing is giving our power to expect somebody else to control us and tell us how to behave. Therefore, we'll behave badly. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much for listening, and stay till the end if you have. Please like, subscribe to my channel. To be honest, I don't know how much I'm building up on it. I'm just experimenting and playing with it at the minute while I'm stuck in the house. But I really appreciate all the watches and the views, and thank you very much. I'm going to go and enjoy this crazy weather day. Bye.